Okay, so I'm gonna just try to make a video explaining where I'm at with working with my migraines. Now, in one of my posts, I said basically that there's two other videos that I've made that you can see in my Kiloby Members area profile. If you go through my post history, by clicking on my name, you'll see that I've made a couple of other posts there that talk about migraines. And in those videos, I explain how I applied KI to my migraines. And I kind of explain the intricacies of what I'm doing with the pain itself, and just some thoughts that I have on it, and I think most other people would have when they're working with such intense chronic pain such as migraines, and dealing with things like how impossible it can feel, and how frustrating it is, and how much care and compassion we have to have for ourselves, because chronic pain and chronic migraines, it's so hard to even imagine that they can be that painful. Like, I don't have a migraine now. It's almost impossible for me to understand what it would be like to go back into the migraine. Like, it's almost unbelievable how painful that they actually can be, seemingly without a source. And now that I don't get them in the same way anymore, so I used to get them in a way which is very overwhelming, overbearing, very it would immobilize me. Now I don't get it like that anymore. I can see how it's, instead of just being this very, like a wall, it used to be like a wall of pain and centralized in my neck and in my head. And then now I've sort of unraveled all of that, and that's turned into this sort of longer, drawn out emotional process of deficiency story, resistance, and all these other things. But it's not anywhere near the same kind of phenomenon that I was experiencing when I first came into KI. So it's changed the way that I experience the quote-unquote migraine. So I much more see it as an emotional issue now, with the pain taking the form, or the suffering, the resistance taking the form of pain, which can be mistaken as a physical issue, physical problem. That's why it seems like the migraine is like a headache, because it's so painful. Okay, so yeah, where was I going? Okay, so yeah, those videos are really, really good. At times I've come back to them because I made them when I was just like, this is it, I need to talk about it, it's clear. I feel really connected to the whole experience, so I made those videos, and I've looked back on them as a reminder. And sometimes when I've been in the middle of a migraine, I've looked back on them and I've gone, no, that is right, this is the way that I work with a migraine. And it's been an absolute godsend to just like have that as a reminder. And also having facilitators as well. I'm a facilitator in training, so I've had that luxury of being able to have a facilitation a couple of times when I have had a migraine. And so, I mean, it's so obvious when you are facilitated and you have a migraine that it does dissipate, and it changes its character. Your perception of what it is and what it is after you are facilitated changes. So yeah. So with those two earlier videos, I'm talking about level 1 and level 2 KI stuff, right? But tending more towards level 1 stuff, and I did a lot of IRF in the early days, but the way that I do IRF has changed over time, mainly because there is so much unconscious resistance to the migraine and it's so painful at that level that it seems impossible. It's just like, if I IRF this, I'm going to break my mind. This is so painful, I want to avoid it. So I didn't do too much IRF. I would, at times when it was unbearable, I would just go, but I wasn't sure if I was making it better or worse, because that's how confusing, and I think how much how many stories I had, and experiences and memories and repression, really, how much repression was contained within that dense ball of pain. It was so intense that I couldn't really IRF it, because it's really just a multiple, that had so many threads that had not fully been explored. And so now that I've unraveled a lot of those threads, I think that I can work with my migraines in a more IRF fashion exclusively, rather than just that basic repression stuff. So so it is IRF when I'm dealing with my migraines at the moment, but it's more in line with body-mind mirroring. Now, so I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to post this, because I touch on, it's important if you're in level 1 to understand that that this is, if you do have migraines, this might be a potential pathway for you. You might start to listen to some of my older videos and go, oh wow, okay, this really applies, or this really applied for me for my migraines, and this is working. So I'll go into the level 2 stuff and really trust the fact that this is going to work on my migraine. Because the thing with migraines is and I experience this almost every time I have a migraine. It feels impossible that what you're experiencing is actually caused by emotional repression, which the impossibility of it is just a symptom of how repressed it is. So working with my migraines now with IRF and more body-mind mirroring, I guess I kind of came to this conclusion with a couple of different things, mainly 2 things actually, which is the discussion that was had in the members area around safety versus what would you call it? Safety versus freedom. Basically, so with my migraines in the early days, I was working with much more soothing techniques, much more calming techniques, which would placate the migraine, and so like kind of I'd edge towards what was tolerable for me, and then placate, edge toward what was tolerable, placate, and that was very beneficial, very useful. And so you need those kind of skills in order for you to work with the migraine at that stage, right? You can't get by. I couldn't get by without a very high degree of self-soothing ability, mindfulness. I've trained a lot in mindfulness, so I'm pretty good at getting into a mindful state. So yeah, where was I going with it? So yeah, we had the discussion, safety versus freedom, and like I said, mindfulness is key, awareness-based practices are key. Whatever is soothing and regulating to your nervous system is key. But I would say that, so the soothing allows us to get into a place where we can see the thoughts and the sensations for what they are. Because if we're dysregulated, that's the sign that we're afraid. And the calming and soothing is a tool in order to allow us to move closer and to become more aware of those sensations and feelings. Now, in the core of my migraine was an intense ball of energy, which was really painful, which slowly unraveled over time into be all of these deficiency stories, right? But initially I had no idea any of that was in there. And to me, it was a complete surprise when I've brought this energy closer to myself, which I previously had thought was, I had hints that was an emotional thing, but as I brought it closer to myself, I realized, well, I didn't even realize about it, it just spoke to me. And the words were, this is the first time I'd ever heard this, and I'd never thought of myself in this way, was that I'd been abandoned. That was the message that was inside of that pain. And when I first saw this, that I was surprised at first, because I never would have thought that about myself, which makes sense, that there is this sense of surprise, because that's what repression is like. And so then and then I got a big sense of relief from seeing that, just by seeing the words as they were, feeling the feeling of the body. And it was like an enormous tension that was inside my body was released. So yeah, so you can see how with that is we're using the safety of the nervous system regulation, mindfulness, awareness-based skills, in order to get at the most unsafe part of ourselves that we're not even aware is there. And so this part of where I see at the core of the migraine, there's this word, I've been abandoned. That seeing that requires a lot of level 1 skills, right? Letting the sensation speak for itself, mind, body, Velcro, that sort of thing. Okay, so I did all those level 1 things, and then I kind of feel like I lost track, because my point was basically that there was the safety and the freedom part, the conversation that got me going, and then so there was the safety and freedom, and then what happened was, then Scott was talking about practice something in your own experience and just keep doing that. And so the new thing I thought was like, okay, let's move towards away from safety even more than I have. And it already felt like I'd stepped through so much of this, stepped into fear basically and away from safety. So the idea that I would continue to do that was really pushing the boundaries of what I felt was sane, actually, because with repression there's so much fear around it. It's like, if I actually look at this and I see this will hurt me, it'll destroy me, it'll undo me, or whatever it is. Because the thing is that your entire sense of self is built on the repression. So if you see through the repression, if you kind of keep bringing it closer to you, it gets integrated and changes who you are as a person. And so there is this kind of like, well, I'm going to come undone, because you will become undone if you see this stuff over and over again. It makes sense, because who you are is built on repression. So if you undo the repression, it's kind of, it is like a death, because of how fear-based it is, how survival-based it is, how central to our identity it is. So yeah, that's basically safety into freedom. Now, so that whole thing got me, I want to say thinking, but it didn't get me thinking, it got me practicing. So I started to get migraines again. Nothing too intense, but I'd had a couple of, they'd come back a few times over the course of me doing KI, and each time I got disheartened, because I was like, oh my god, I put in all this work, migraines are back, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. So, and then I got to this point where I was like, okay, I'm feeling crazy, but let's just see. I remember it working, so I'm just going to see what's in the migraine. And again and again and again, I was shown that actually this is not a physical problem, it's an emotional problem. And every time I would cross through to the other side, I'd learn something new about myself. So I kept doing that, and anyway, I guess there's heaps of different layers to that, and I could explain all the nuances and the whatever of that, and my 2 other videos have done that. So basically, the point of this video, in a really, really long-winded way, is that I wanted to explain where I'm at with mind-body mirroring, IRF, basically. But the reason I set up the context for that is like, so all of these different skills work together. The previous 2 videos that I've had, all the skills that I laid out in those videos, and the videos all on the Kiloby Members area, all of that are skills that keep building, and they become so automatic, and they eventually combine together to create IRF in a way. Whereas actually, like when you're IRFing, you're kind of doing a lot of different things simultaneously. So that's what I found with it anyway. And so with IRF mind-body mirroring and this idea of stepping out, and this is the key thing, is like when I had this idea and really realizing this really helped with working with a migraine, because I was able to realize actually that it was like the final piece of the puzzle. Like actually the more pain that I actually exposed myself to, this is not an intellectual thing, this is a real insight. The more pain that I exposed myself to in terms of repression, I've done it so many times that I've seen all the positive changes happen automatically. And it's like, okay, I can then push the boundaries of that again. And so me doing that again led to a deepening, I guess, ability to use the skill of IRF, mind-body mirroring. So it was this context which was applied to my whole awareness that the most crazy thought, like I'd get suicidal thoughts, and these were inside my migraine. The most suicidal thought, the most painful feeling of worthlessness, the most whatever it is, the most painful thought and feeling, mind-body Velcro effect that is there, can be brought into awareness, and that is totally fine, and that with the right context and the right skill, it will transform just by being seen, just by being experienced and felt. And then that transformation will happen automatically after I do the work. So I did it. And so when I started doing IRF and mind-body mirroring on my migraines, I'll just tell you what the experience is like, so at least you can maybe find some comfort in that when you go to do it and it feels like you're being blown to smithereens. You might go, okay, I heard Jacob talk about this is normal and this is okay, and I'll just wait to see what the effects are in my life after I do this. So now think about it like this. A year ago, I was completely immobilized when I had a migraine. I couldn't do anything. Now, if I have a migraine, right, I'm walking around and I'm rapid firing it and body, mind, mirroring whatever thought. So actually what I'm doing is making conscious whatever my body is telling me. So that's like really getting in touch with the sensations, interpreting what they're saying really quickly, actually, not even questioning what is being said, not judging what's being said, not trying to fit it into a pre-existing paradigm. So I'm worthless, I'm a piece of shit, I'm trash, I hate this, I don't like that. Just keep going. And it's painful and it's lacerating, right, when you've got a migraine. Other times it can be completely fine, because you'll notice the deficiency stories sometimes have pain attached, and other times they're totally fine, when you, especially if you've worked a lot through KI. So yeah, completely lacerating pain. Like I can't express how painful it is. And yet I'm not incapacitated, right? The pain isn't really the same way at all. It's not in my neck anymore. It's more throughout the whole body, and I'm able to function and do everything that I wouldn't have been able to do 1 year ago, 10 months ago, whenever I started doing KI. And so now, okay, so there's that, right? So I'm able to function, which is a good thing. Now, the effects afterwards is what I've been noticing. So this is the thing, is like, this isn't just a short-term fix. We're not talking about short-term. It's like, what happens when we're making all of these things super conscious? The next day is totally different. Now notice that what it's like having a migraine, doing nothing about it, just letting yourself, just placating it, right? Notice what that's like, rather than bringing all of that pain up and just letting it just come through, like getting the silt and the mud and stirring it right up and just letting it come around through the system, right? Notice what that's like in the after effects compared to a regular migraine when you get it. They're two totally different things. They're way different. On one hand, you've got suppression, repression, laying around, doing nothing, and then afterwards, you're starting to feel a bit better. It's a bit foggy or whatever. And then when I do IRF and body mind mirroring, it's a total turnaround of the experience. I'm active. Like that next morning, I'm excited. I'm energetic. I want to plan my day. I want to go to gym. I want to function to an even greater degree. So actually what's happening is there's a natural processing that's happening, and you don't need to think about this. It happens automatically as a result of stirring up all this stuff. So yeah, that's kind of, I mean, it's hard to describe actually what I'm doing. It's a skill that you'll have to pick up in a level 2 members area, but it's getting everything that is unconscious, making it as conscious as you can, bringing it up into your awareness, bringing it up out into a spacious presence, and it's painful when you have a migraine. It's the worst parts of you are going to come out. Notice that if you were to do repression work, so as in IRF, mind body mirroring, if you were to do that right now and say you're feeling okay, you might find there is a bit of pain, there is a bit of suffering attached, right? But you go, okay, these experiences that I'm having, these thoughts and these feelings, they're definitely connected to the repression. It's not that painful. It's kind of painful. I can deal with it. Now, if you do it with a migraine, notice how that pain transforms into the worthlessness, the suicidal thoughts, I've been abandoned, like all of that sort of stuff, right? To me, that is what is the proof. The proof is that it's not an accident that those sort of thoughts occur when you have a migraine as opposed to when you don't, and that there's suffering on them, attached to them. They're just so repressed, the anger's so much, the whatever is so much, that it becomes very, very painful. Look, yeah, I know it's been a long video, and I probably moved a bit too fast. I haven't really been able to verbalize any of this because I don't go to meetings because being in Australia, the time zone difference is way different. So I've probably repeated myself quite a few times, but whatever. I'm just gonna throw it out there, get it a bit more concise for everyone, and yeah, we'll go from there.